So I'm out here having a campfire in the rain, and it got me thinking about just a couple things I like to keep in mind if I'm having a campfire, more specifically for warmth while I'm camping. And the first one is making sure I collect enough firewood. A lot of times I'll cut down like one or two dead trees that are like smaller or more medium sized, and I'll be like, that's enough firewood for the night. And then I know it's going to get down to like the 20s or sometimes even colder than that, and then I find myself at about 2 a.m. thinking, I'm out of wood already and I'll be freezing. So that's the first thing I like to keep in mind, is collect enough firewood. The next thing is just kind of thinking about the burn time of your firewood. Generally, when I put a piece on the fire, I expect it to burn about 1 to 2 inches per hour. If it's a smaller piece, like let's say like 4 inches or less, then it's probably going to be closer to the 2 inches per hour. But if it's a larger piece, you're looking at more like 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches an hour. And even tonight, I have a piece that was about 8 inches wide, and it ended up burning for probably 5 or 6 hours, which is fairly good. And in addition to doing that, you want to keep in mind if you're burning a hardwood or a softwood. If you're burning things like pine, it's going to burn extremely fast. Generally, pine burns really hot, burns really fast. There's a lot of sap in it, so you'll get a lot more crackling as well. But if you're burning like a more hardwood like oak or maple, it's going to burn slower. So keep that in mind as well. If you burn softwoods like pine, you'll get a hotter fire. Hardwoods like oak, and you'll get a much slower fire that'll burn quite a lot longer. And another thing to keep in mind is kind of the size of your fire. If you're sleeping in more of a lean-to shelter like you built, like a debris hut, you're probably going to have more of a long fire, like probably 5-6 feet long in total. So cut your wood accordingly. It doesn't really make sense if you're having a long fire that's 5 or 6 feet long to cut your wood into 16-inch pieces, because your fire is going to be much smaller than that. But if you're going to have a more traditional sized campfire, like the one I'm having tonight is about 2 feet across, maybe 2.5 on the high end, it doesn't make sense for me to cut my wood super long. So my wood right now is cut at like 14 to 16 inches, which is more traditional. But if you're having a long fire, why would you go through all that effort? Tonight it kind of makes more sense because my fire is smaller, it's more round. It was meant to keep me warm sitting in a chair versus laying down. And additionally, you want to also keep in mind what kind of fire you're having, because if you are having a long fire, it's probably because you're laying down. If I'm trying to keep warm sitting up, I'll have a more upright fire because I'm sitting upright. But if I'm going to go to bed, why would I build a 2-foot fire when I could build a 5-foot long fire and keep my entire body warm regardless of if I have a sleeping bag or not? If I have a smaller 2-foot fire, part of me is going to be cold, and I'm going to be feeling it way more often, versus if I have a much longer fire that keeps my whole body warm at the same time. And additionally, I think one thing that is important, and I find most of my warmth comes not just from just the flames, but also your coal bed. So it's really important to build a solid bed of coals before you go to bed, and that'll also help keep your fire nice and hot. So if it burns down in the middle of the night and you got to put more wood on, you don't have to rely on whatever piece is currently burning. You have a solid bed of coals to relight whatever piece you end up putting on. It also helps keep your wood dry because it produces heat even without flames. But that's just a few things I like to keep in mind if I'm having a solid campfire that I'm using to keep warm, especially in the winter and even in the summer. If you don't want to bring as much gear, you can use a fire to keep warm instead of hiking on all your gear. But keep that in mind, it'll keep you a ton warmer.